Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Finance Magnates London Summit 2023. To kick off the day, I'm happy to announce the first panel from 2023 Tech Setbacks to 2024 Talent Triumphs. Please welcome the moderator, Nadia Edwards-Dashti, Chief Customer Officer at Harrington Starr, who will now introduce her incredible panel. Let's give them a warm welcome. Thank you.
Thanks everybody and thanks for joining us. So today we're going to be talking about talent. It's a topic so close to my heart and I'm super excited to be alongside these three amazing women who will be giving their insights, advising on what our considerations need to be moving into next year, but also a bit of an overview of what's happened over the course of the last 12 months, because I don't think anyone could have predicted what we have seen. But what we have seen within the industry is some remarkable efforts to look after our staff, invest in our people and accelerate careers, and those will be some of the topics that we're going to be talking about today. Thank you for the introduction. Yes, my name's Nadia and I work for a company called Harrington Starr. We specialise in placing technologists and salespeople into the world of financial services, and fintech is a huge part of that for us. We are very, very passionate about investing in careers and investing in people. So it's no wonder that this is going to be a huge part of the conversation today. So without any further ado, I'm going to let the panellists each introduce themselves and tell us a bit more about what we'll be talking about. Felicity.
Hi, my name is Felicity Graham. I'm the Global Talent Acquisition Manager at a company called Confluence Technologies, which is known as Confluence. And we provide technology and services to the investment management market. I've been in recruitment since the beginning of my career, really, in one way, shape or form. Firstly working for recruitment agencies and then moving in-house a few years ago. I love working in technology, and that's where I've ended up, really enjoying things. It's super dynamic, things change, as you mentioned, really, really quickly. So I really enjoy that. I work with some really bright, hard-working people as well, which always makes the day go a little bit quicker. With regards to, my focus is really on hiring. So I'm a talent acquisition manager. And for me, it's not just about getting the right people, but it's about attracting the people in the right way as well.
Thank you. Michelle.
I'm not sure if the mic's on. Is it on? Perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Rockson. I work for TrueLayer. Been there just under a year. My role is to lead the people partnering function, and that involves really kind of life cycle of employees, but focused in the next 12 months or so is really then about working with individuals to accelerate their careers, and thinking broadly about what that feels like for each individual, making that as meaningful as possible. So this is a great opportunity to come here and talk about it and meet some peers and hear what other people are doing across fintech.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm currently an advisor for fintech startups. My career went back about 10 years ago when I started off in recruitment, spent a couple of years in a corporate environment, and then eventually found myself in the world of startups, starting off with Revolut in my early days. And then since then, I've just been working with different kind of fintechs. Particularly, I do stay in the financial services space, doing recruitment, operations, and at this point, I am an advisor for a couple of different portfolio companies. So I guess I'm excited to be here today. It's because talent is a big topic in the company, but at the very same time, it isn't just about recruitment. It's also about retention. It's also about looking at org design. It's also about optimizing whether or not you're able to kind of run or grow the business with the right kind of people and right kind of skill sets in place. So yeah, very excited to be on the panel today.
And thank you to all three of you. So this is exactly what we want today's conversation to be about, really challenging what your perception may be of talent right now. And a large number of people will think that is just the hiring function, and we really want to debunk some of that as a myth. We want to talk about what traditional talent may have looked like, but also the future of talent and redefining that. So Felicity, I'm going to come to you first.
Well, it's been a really interesting few years, actually. You know, we talk about the last 12 months as a lot happening, but certainly the last few years since COVID really slowed everything down, and it's been so turbulent since then. Inflation, Ukraine war, interest rates, have really impacted businesses over the last 12 months and forced organisations to be really meaningful in the way that they hire and that they retain employees and engage people. The market has been really tight, the labour market, over the past 2 or 3 years. Over the last 12 months, due to the layoffs, it has become a little bit more fluid again. And I think going into next year, a lot of the research that I've done shows that investment is going to go up for a lot of organisations. So talent is going to become tighter, and we really have to stay ahead of the curve when we are considering our talent and how we attract the right people into the business and keep them engaged.
And it's great to hear you talking about that retention piece, the engagement piece. Sophie, I know with all your experience, especially within your function, advising a number of companies, what's your perception and definition of talent?
Talent is basically people who help you grow your business and actually do the work that needs to be done. But at the same time, I think we forget that talent is also your leadership team, right? We don't always have your founders to become ultimately your leadership team all throughout the entire life cycle or the life stage of your company. And I think, when you really zoom out as a business leader, you would look at talent as the people doing the job, the people leading the teams, the people actually going out and look for new businesses as well, people building the products for you to sell more and acquire more market sizes. And I think, sometimes when you just look at talent as people, you kind of get yourself isolated in a space where you look at just the pillars of how you want to treat the people. So yeah, that's how I look at talent.
And I'm sure we're going to explore that a bit more on exactly what companies can do to be better. But Michelle, I wanted just to come to you first because when we talk about bettering the experience, you've got quite a bit of experience in that, and I wanted you to share that with us.
Yeah. I think having worked across various different organisations, you get through different phases, the startup phase and then into scale up. And I think sometimes focus can be on when you're growing massively, it's like get people through the door. We've got all this work that needs to be done. We get people through the door. And then you get to a point where you kind of stop and you pivot and you think we've got some great people in the room. But now that we've kind of done our growing, we need to then be thinking about how do we develop and how we enhance the skills and experiences of the people in the room. And a massive ambition for TrueLayer is that, at the point where people decide they're leaving, whether it's in 12 months or 12 years, we've only been going for 7, so, it's a challenge. But, at whatever point they decide to leave, we want them to be, the same way you see people put ex-Amazon or ex, etc. on their LinkedIn profile, we want them to feel like their short time, however long it's been at TrueLayer, has been accelerated because of the experiences they've had. And that's not to say that it's linear progression necessarily, it's the breadth and the opportunities to get involved and do so many different things. People join our organisation because they know they have the opportunity to do that, versus other organisations which might be more linear, but you then don't have the breadth. So really kind of thinking about individuals, what they want, what acceleration means for them, and then working with them to make sure they're meeting those goals. So when they leave, they might be exhausted because we're just in that kind of phase where it's a massively fast-paced organisation, but they're so much more accelerated than they would have been than elsewhere, which is really important.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? And I think this is like, I look at that as a responsibility. Like, it's your responsibility when someone commits to working with you for whatever period of time, and what can you give back to them as they'll be giving to you. Felicity, I know this is something that you're quite passionate about as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. And you spoke a lot about experience, and that for me really has to be the main thread when you're looking at hiring, particularly. Sorry, I keep coming back to hiring, of course. And that's before day one. That is at every touch point that the candidate and the prospective employee has, and we need to be really cognizant of our branding and how we're representing ourselves in the market, and really defining who we are. So, why should someone join the business and dedicate that time to an organisation? And, we're so much more digital and everything is out there. You can set up your LinkedIn, Glassdoor, whatever it might be, to really showcase the organisation. For me, it is about the people and really celebrating the employees that you have, springboarding those successes, and really using your employees as advocates. creating content around those employees to therefore attract the right people in. We do a lot of questionnaires. So, what kind of experience does the person have as they're brought into the business? We do onboarding questionnaires, particularly between day 45 and day 60 of somebody's employee life cycle. And a lot of the feedback that we have is around, yes, candidates really want a streamlined process. They want it as easy as possible, just one click and, you're in, and then really transparent process. But a lot of the positive feedback that we get is very human related. It's, I really felt supported by that person or that person, and they got me really excited about joining the organisation. So, yes, it's really important to get the process right and efficient, but also it's the experience and how somebody feels about joining the organisation and ultimately staying.
Yeah, and it's how that person feels, right? I think a lot of companies can overlook that part of the process, thinking, well, I just need to get the best looking person on paper, when actually that might not be the best person for your business, when somebody else is way more excited about your business and joining it. And I love everything you said there, because it's very much around employee value proposition.
Yes,
and
getting that right.
And getting that right and communicating that. And Sophie, I wanted to ask you a bit more about that EVP, because as you go in and advise many companies, it's often, this is where you start to help them work out what this even looks like, how they get that across to people. What advice could you share with us today?
I think you'll be surprised to find out that most people say that they want an EVP when they bring in someone to kind of advise them where do we start, and they think that they start off with an idea that they have because it's an ideal state of a company that they want to achieve. I want to be known as XYZ. I want the touch and feel to be like this. But then very quickly, when you do a due diligence, you realize that you actually don't even have the foundation to actually get there to start with. So my first advice to companies when we talk about EVPs is to actually be really true and authentic to themselves first. So first and foremost, really understand what are the cultural values, what are you really looking for, what do you reward as great behaviors, what are the bad behaviors, what do you want to eliminate, and find out really kind of like underneath that hood, what is it that will work for the company. And the moment they accept this is our DNA, it makes it so much easier for them to then build this EVP framework. Because at the end of the day, it's a framework that is meant to work for you, not you work for them. And I think lots of companies actually get that wrong in the first place. So, my advice has always been, take your time, sporadically find out exactly what your DNA is and be true to that. And then you'll be able to build the EVP. That way also, if you think about it, if I'm sitting here communicating about the culture, the values, or just the proposition of a company, I know that I truly believe in it because we've done the hard work to get there.
It's really interesting because we're talking about culture, mission, values, and communicating that. A lot of businesses, especially in growth phase or looking at who are we going to retain, they often think this is only about benefits. Benefits are super important, and we're about to talk about some great benefits that we've all seen. But actually, so far, we've been focusing on that mission, that value, what the purpose will be of that individual, how they can grow. And this is something that as an external recruiter that partners with many companies, I often see that this is missed. So I'm really loving that each of you are focusing on this. But on that point around well-being and benefits, Michelle, it'd be great to hear some of the things that you can shout about. But also, I'm excited to hear from all of you, from the great things that you've seen in the industry that we can really celebrate.
Some great things happening at the moment, and if I think about my experience at TrueLayer, I joined, and through the process, the recruiter's talking to me, and she was like, "Oh, we have like 12 wellbeing days a year," and I was like, "Is that a thing though? Do people use it?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, well they do." And you join, and people talk about them taking a wellbeing day, and it automatically feeds through. That's not even a, you put it through the system, and your manager approves it. It's an automatic. If you wake up in the morning, you feel like I'm having a tough day today, I'm going to take a wellbeing day. It's for you to clear your diary, etc. But you just put it through the system, and it's done. 12 a year, which I'm like industry leading. I was like, what? That's amazing. Why are we not talking about it? And I think there's a lot to be said for sometimes doing great things on the ground and thinking, well, that's the bare minimum. We can do more than that, and we can do more, and we can do more. But actually being reminded that it's it's pretty amazing. It's not something that I've come across anywhere else. And when I speak to my peers, it's not something that they talk about. We have great enhanced birthing parent leave and also non-birthing parent leave, and things like birthing parent when they come back from maternity leave, the first 3 months they work 4 days a week but they get paid for 5. So again, helping that transition back into work, not just saying we're flexible and want to help you, but we're giving you a free day so you can kind of help transition yourself back in. So many amazing things happen. I've come across organizations that proactively offer menopause support. And again, it's one of those things that people typically don't talk about. And I'm really glad that we're in this phase of life where it's something that, because when we hear about menopause, when it affects women, it's debilitating. And so to come across organizations that are open and want to talk and want a woman to be able to kind of say, actually, I'm having a really tough time because of my mental health or hot flushes or all the terrible things that come with menopause, and being quite vocal about the support they need, I think it's a really exciting phase of benefits at the moment. And thinking about how you target it to the individuals rather than a blanket gym policy. Like, I haven't been to a gym for a really long time. There's a blanket gym policy that most people probably can't use or won't use, or a handful of people, kind of thinking about the needs of the organization and helping people pivot towards what's most useful for them.
I love those examples. Thank you for sharing them. Felicity, do you have any examples you'd like to share?
I know that you spoke about maternity actually as well when we were talking beforehand, and do you mind just elaborating on that a little bit
In terms of the
TrueLayer, what they offer?
Yeah, the policy is amazing. So it's like 24 weeks paid leave, and as you're coming back in, I'm saying you've got the transition period back in, but as you're coming back in as well, you have the opportunity to really kind of come back and think about helping that transition back through the organisation, and delivery vouchers when the baby comes, because we know that those first couple of weeks are horrendous and you're probably not going to be cooking, so let's send you some goodies. Flowers are great, but delivery vouchers go way further. So things like that, someone, and I can't even take credit for this is happening long before I joined, someone in the background thinking, what can we do to truly not just say we're supporting, but actually support. What do we know about our own experiences of having been on maternity leave and going back? Now let's put that into practice and make sure we're supporting non-birthing parents 12 weeks off, which again is amazing. So I'm just like, this is great. This is us putting our money where our mouth is in more ways than one.
And that is very much industry leading. It's rare that you hear about benefits that are that enhanced. But we have seen that companies are getting creative around what they can offer, and it's not just statutory. How can we just get by and focus on the bottom line? It's really about the employee's experience when they're working for the organisation. From a hiring perspective, we just need to be really cognizant of that, because you can't just get away with the basics anymore. It's really about looking at all different elements. What might people be looking for? It might not just be pay and benefits. It might be equity, diversity, and inclusion. Do they have an inclusive culture? Is that obvious when I join? Is there a diverse interview panel? Have I met lots of different types of people? Am I represented when if I was to join? And people have much more options to choose from than they would have had even 3 or 4 years ago. So benefits are really, really important. I don't know if I can add any other particular ones, but it is certainly very important.
But I think those comments are super valuable, because when we're talking about talent from hiring through to retaining, engaging and accelerating somebody's career, all of these parts they make up that experience for that person. And you've just mentioned there something super important, and that's having a more diverse interview panel, so that you feel that there are people that you can relate to, that you can espouse to be. And this is something that I think is often overlooked in promotion criteria. When people look to where they could grow within a company, these are some of the things that are often missed in our industry. Sophie, again, I come to you for your experience across a number of different organisations. What are some of the benefits or well-being pieces, or even to help people retain and grow in a company? What have you seen?
I've seen some really good benefits that are very true to each company, and I think it's really important. I always come back to the authenticity piece, For example, I know maybe Revolut's not a great example in a lot of ways. However, getting twice a year performance bonus is actually quite nice. It's a sweet deal for people who are very, performance driven. And this really comes down to how you attract the right talent for your company. It starts from the very beginning. And I've seen companies actually, I also work with a couple of sustainability and B Corp companies, which I feel like it's leap years ahead of what fintech is actually really trying to do and establish from a beneficial point of view. They look at well-being days as it's granted. It's not something you ask for. There's lots of activities that you do to talk about how to support each other. Peer support groups that just, pop up in different pockets of the company because people truly relate themselves to it. You get social committees, you get DE&I committees, and it just happens because it's an industry that isn't, heavily regulated. You don't have to overthink about the stuff that you're doing. I think sometimes it's embedded in us to feel that we need to cross all the T's and dot all the I's before we launch something, whereas some other companies in some other industry, they just crack on and make it happen. So I think, there's different industries offer different things, but again, it really comes down to the talent. Would I personally work for, long-term in a B Corp? I think in my life stage right now, probably yes. I want a lot more flexibility. I want benefits that work for me. Same things as talking about menopausal benefits, talking about, extended and enhanced parental leave. That's not a conversation. It's you come in, this is part of your contract, and that's it, move on. And then we have these regular conversations around what else needs to be improved. And it just trickles. It's a regular thing rather than saying, sometimes when you do, I'm sure you've seen, Nadia, EVPs, you do every 12 months. You do a revise and you refresh. What else can we improve?
Yeah, I love this this point of just regular conversation. And also another thing that's really shining through is that everyone's different and different things are going to resonate with different people. So if we're really, really busy with that communication, we can make sure that we're reflecting the needs of our people. And it was about a year ago now, but we did a huge survey at Harrington Starr to really understand, why are people leaving their businesses and what would we have had to have done differently to have made them stay. And the biggest stat that came out of it was around the understanding of career progression. So I love how you talk about career acceleration, because there's the stat was 67% of people would have stayed in their last company if only they really knew what they needed to do to progress. And many companies say, oh, well, this is our career progression chart, but for the individual, are they clear? Are they clear what they have to do? We're halfway through this year's salary survey and survey on why individuals are looking to move. And the stats already, I looked at them last week, they're looking pretty much exactly the same. So this is a huge, huge opportunity, I think, for businesses. So I turn the question back to you, Michelle, because I know you're super passionate about this career acceleration. You joked earlier that people will leave the business super tired because they've accelerated so much. But tell us a bit more about how it all works.
Yeah. I think the really important thing, though, is thinking about what's valuable to the individual. So you might be speaking to one person and talking to them about the amazing opportunities that they have, but if all they're seeing is, I'm doing more work for less money potentially because of this acceleration, it has to be as meaningful for them as it is for you. And it's in how you convey, but also going back to what's important to them. I'm at the point in my life where acceleration means a very different thing. Like, when I was younger, I was thinking, right, I need to be promoted after 12 months or 18 months or whatever that is, whatever that number is in your head. And now I'm like, how can I broaden my skill set? What are the things I can do? Like being on this panel today, I was just like, right, this is another opportunity to develop and speak in front of an audience and kind of build that. So I'm constantly looking around the organization, and that might take you outside of your normal function. But think about what are the things that I can pull in. And I speak to women all the time who are amazing at what they do, but have this gravitas word at the back of their heads of, I don't know if I've got enough gravitas, and I don't know if I'm in a room, I'm commanding enough. And that's not necessarily sending you off to do a piece of training. It might work if we get you a coach, but probably what we do is we give you the opportunity to be the expert in the room and to be very clear in kind of stand in your own power, as they say, and be very clear in what you bring into that space. And I think that's quite tough. And so for me, this career acceleration piece is, I'm very, very clear that it's not about linear progression. It's about what do you want as an individual, and what can we as an organization do to help accelerate that. And ideally we accelerate it in a way that's meaningful and that keeps you in the organization for longer. But if accelerating you means that it sets you up for your next opportunity, that for me is like the biggest opportunity for you to be a spokesperson for organization, for everything that we've done to help you get to that next level, even if it isn't potentially with us. So that's a huge passion of the people function at the moment, and lots of different activities in the background to kind of really that put that through the roof really in 2024 and make that come to life in a much more meaningful way.
Absolutely. And I think there's a certain level of confidence in that as well, isn't it, as a business? So I'm confident enough to give my absolute full support to accelerate you in your career. And if you do end up moving on, I know, as you said, that you'll be a spokesperson for the business. But actually, so many people will see that builds and breeds loyalty to the business, because you know that you're supported. Your career is accelerated in many different directions and ways in an environment where you were believed in. And I think that, again, is something that's often overlooked. But when we look to the future and we look into 2024, there's some quite structural things that are starting to change in the future of work. And Sophie, you are a living, breathing, fractional working specialist. So I'd love for you to explain what that means and why we're going to be seeing more of it.
Fractional, where do I start? I feel like this is such a buzzword right now. It means people are able to kind of do the work. So, for example, I am a consultant. I'm also a fractional executive, and that means I work across the board in different companies that need me for specific services. And I think the market is a lot more acceptable to it right now, in the sense that, I'm not turned away. For example, if I can't spend 5 days a week doing the work that I know only require me to be a day a week. So that's kind of like how, the rise of fractional consultants and fractional executives, especially in today's day and age, has existed. But I think also just looking at the future of work, the reality of the increase of demand in fractional work is simply because organizations right now need to be a lot smarter in the way they manage their cash flow. They need to be a lot more optimized in the way they work. For example, if you rewind about 10 years ago, you hardly hear HR talk about org design. I think, people teams, HR teams and operational teams right now are doing a lot of crossover to make sure that there's an optimal organizational design that has been carefully thought after when you start running an organization to its optimus, and also making it really lean. And so because of that, as an outcome of it, you get fractional consultants, you get executives who are there to lead, will do exactly just the work that you would need them to do, but for a fraction of that cost. It's a win-win situation. So I truly believe I've got a community of fractional consultants together with me, and we're getting a lot of joy. It comes back to what Michelle is talking about. What's a win-win situation we can get, right? I'm enjoying the work I'm doing. I feel incredibly fulfilled and rewarded. At the same time, I feel like the organizations are also getting what they need.
And I think that really is a huge theme for 2024. How do we remain lean? How do we make sure that we are hiring the right people, but then investing in them and making sure that they are getting what they asked for, and that win-win that we've been talking about, that balance. It's not just a transaction anymore. It's that being able to build and grow with a business. Thinking about how things are changing, there's new tools, there's AI. Felicity, tell us more.
Yeah, I don't profess to be an AI specialist, by the way, although we do hire for AI engineers. But the market is moving incredibly quickly at the moment. Twofold from a hiring perspective, certainly tools are so much more capable than they were even a couple of years ago. For hiring teams and HR teams, a lot of it is around automation. So how do we make things as efficient as possible and really spend time in more meaningful ways, whether it is working on exciting projects or conducting interviews, and actually working proactively, talent pipelining, for example, looking for future talent, and perhaps even interviewing talent that for roles that you haven't got yet, but might have in the future. So that's really one side is, AI as well, video interviewing, and there's a lot of technology that's coming through that's very highly regulated, actually, in some countries, but that'll be interesting. Hiring for roles, tech roles in the future as well is going to perhaps look quite different to how it does currently. So we hire for a lot of quite traditional software engineers, and we require 10 years of experience in X tech stack. But actually, when we look, in the future, there is technology that doesn't exist yet, and we need to bring in people that are going to build that technology. So skills-based hiring is, certainly a focus for a lot of companies at the moment, and really hiring for adaptability, people that can really go with the flow as things develop. It's not necessarily just about those technical skills. Yes, of course, they're important, but it's about finding the right people that have got the right attributes to really help your business accelerate and grow.
I'm so pleased you brought that up, that adaptability piece, because for me it opens up the whole conversation around hiring for potential, and then everything that you said, Michelle, about that acceleration of a career growth. And if we look back to how we hired last year, the year before, you're absolutely right. Many companies would ask for 10 years worth of this or that or the other, when actually, are we still using this, that, and the other? Are those the skill sets of today and tomorrow and the day beyond that? And so I really like that you've spoken about the adaptability, because it's a completely different way of hiring and interviewing. It's a completely different way of promoting as well. And it reminds me of sort of 2006 and 7 when there were a number of financial organisations, and anyone in the audience who might remember those days, a number of financial organisations came to me to help them find VB developers, which do not exist anymore, right? And the tests that they would get the VB developers to do were handwritten tech tests, which I could never understand why I had to put this poor, and most of the time, poor man in a room with printed out pages and a pen and leave him in there for 3 hours to prove his knowledge of VB, which 2 years later was shut down. And these same individuals, if they hadn't moved over to .NET, if they hadn't retrained themselves, were left defunct. And we've seen that with the AS400 people. They were stuck doing that, and I think there's a few that still exist. But it's so true for today and the future of work and the future of how we hire. So thank you for bringing in that adaptability piece. We've got 8 minutes left, and I definitely would like a couple of questions. But before we go to that, I wanted just to ask each of you, what do you want to leave the audience with today? Because our goal was very much about committing to a change in the way that we look at talent, and the way that we invest in talent. But I wanted to hear from each of you what you would really like from that audience. Felicity.
I think we've spoken a lot about experience, that the employee goes through, and really having that at the forefront of your mind when making any business decision, really. So that would certainly be one thing, and also hiring for the future, and focusing on what talent will look like, now of course, but in a few years' time, and really looking forward and just thinking outside the box a little bit.
Amazing. Thank you. Michelle.
For me, it's about open-mindedness. So for those people in the room, when they think about what their career looks like now, what it might look like in 12 months or 5 years, etc., being very open and not just kind of tying yourself back to what accelerated career looks like. And, I was saying a couple of years ago, I hadn't understood the concept of the work that Sophie does, but it absolutely makes sense. Of course it does. It's like if you're a startup and you need the knowledge and experience in the room, but you're thinking, well, we can't afford that. Having that person in the room 1 day a week accelerates you in a way that you potentially would never have. And so it's brought this kind of openness to trying new things, and also this idea of a squiggly career. Like, I bet your CV is bonkers. It's just kind of done lots of different things. And so somebody might look at it and like, I don't know what I'm looking at. But being open-minded, looking at the experience and looking at the value the individual can add, rather than, oh, it's not linear, or they haven't been at one place for 2 years and 3 years, etc., and therefore it's hard to make that connection. That's probably the open-mindedness piece for me.
Speaking of that, I would never get that job, by the way. Just haven't been in the place long enough to do that. I think it's already getting there, but I think companies ought to really bring back the basics when it comes to running a business. Leaders need to start thinking about organizational design. I always come back to that. It's been parked for so many years in the last few years that we feel it's about filling bumps and seats. Blitz scaling is no longer a thing. Let's not do that anymore because it's so much heartache after a few years when all of it kind of tumbles. We just need to be really cognizant about making those really important decisions, right? Have the right people in the room. If you can't afford that, if you can't afford them, find a way to afford them, because you do need those right people in the rooms and make those critical decisions. And I think, it starts from the top. We always tend to think that, when we grow, it's about, getting more developers, getting more engineers. Most of the time, engineering teams like 80% of the company. What about the other 20%? But then the other 20% is actually also running the business on a day-to-day basis. They're equally just as important. So make sure that you're spending enough dedication and time and investment into each and every one of these individuals, not just the ones that are the majority of them, because without a CTO, you can't run this. But then at the same time, who's selling the stuff? Right? So I think we really need to be really fair, take a step back, zoom out most of the time, and leaders really need to start stepping up.
Absolutely. It's about that ecosystem and making sure that we are aware of every part of it. So thank you very much, panelists. I'll put this out to the audience. We've got just under 5 minutes left. Any questions for our panelists?
Hi there. Thinking about the fractional sort of employment model, where do you see contracting going? Because, there's waves where organizations bring in a whole bunch of contractors, then release them all. We've seen IR35 really change the landscape. Where do you see that playing a part in the ecosystem at the moment?
I think most fractional consultants are still contractors. It really depends on how you kind of formulate how you want to be working. Obviously, I'm also not saying that when you're a fractional employee, you take on 3 jobs, because that's not going to be very nice for taxes, for example. But I think it's about steering away from this detachment from contractors in a way to actually switch it towards it's a fractional person, and so therefore I can rely on them a lot more. So I'll give you a good example. For example, in my situation, as a consultant, I feel like I'm always at arm's length. It feels very interim basis, and it feels like there are times where I'm probably not empowered to make certain decisions as compared to me being in a full-time role. But if I'm, say, an interim chief people officer, I may not make certain decisions that may impact a long-term cost, financial planning, or forecasting and so forth. But if I'm a fractional CPO, I feel like I'm in the executive board. I am making those decisions because ultimately it is my responsibility. I am leading on a people strategy, and I am making some of these key things to drive the needle forward. So I think it really is a shift of mentality, and also it comes down to the acceptance and the appetite for the company itself. I have definitely, personally, in my experience, I have met companies who just aren't bought into the idea at all, would rather put me on a contractor contract, but when you read between the lines, it's exactly the same. What I'm actually meant to be doing on a day-to-day basis requires me to be a fractional CPO, for example.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. You've been amazing panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.